Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships and the third and fourth of the PVE Operations. Now this is Killer Whale and obviously it's been and gone already, but you can still play it if you can get together enough friends into one of the ops divisions. And that's actually quite fun to do. That's what you're going to see with the fourth one, Raptor, where 6 out of 7 of us were all in the same division and all chatting away on TeamSpeak. And actually we did that one later on with 7 people and proceeded to do some of the previous operations. I said divisions there. The previous operations, because of course if you've got enough people together you can just do the previous ones even though they're not in the matchmaking queue anymore. So Killer Whale, it's basically the inverse of the very first one where you were defending a port. This time you are attacking. And the structure of this one is that the first part's quite easy. The actual getting in, knocking out the fortifications, knocking out the base buildings, taking out the defending ships, that part's all really quite straightforward. It's the actual getting away that's going to be trickier. Now for taking out the forts, basically if you've got 6-inch guns or if you're a destroyer you go with HE. If you've got bigger than 6-inch guns, actually having said bigger than, I think that probably still goes for the 155 mils that you find on, is it the, not the de Grasse, Galissonier, that gets 155s, doesn't it? Or am I thinking of the Emile Bartard? I can't remember. One of the French ships, I mean, bear in mind, you know, you could see either of those because it's tier 5 and tier 6 for operations. Yeah, it's 7-inch and above AP is what you want to be firing. Below that, you go with HE, in my experience. And I think that's definitely true for the Leander. Well, I think that's definitely true. It might be true for the Leander. If you're playing a Leander and you were... maybe someone in the comments will enlighten me. Maybe the Leander's extra normalization meant that it did better against the forts with AP. But my guess would be that if you were playing a Leander in this mode, you just had to let everybody else do the work for this early part. So you start off taking out the initial forts, and it's worth noting there's a couple in the north actually. You probably will know that if you've played this, but they don't seem to count towards the total that you need for the secondary condition. And I saw somebody in one of the games get a bit confused about this, thinking that they had to go out and knock out the ones in the north. You don't, as far as I can tell. Those just don't seem to count. So once you've knocked them out, you start knocking out the inner defense ones, and that's when some of the defending ships spawn. And this time round, it's largely German ships that you have to contend with, although obviously the Germans don't have a carrier yet. The premium carrier that I've forgotten the name of temporarily, that's on its way. But yeah, it's a Hosho, and then I think a pair of Yuzhos that you encounter later, I think. Can't remember exactly. I should perhaps point out, by the way, this is on the NA server. As with the first two, I just picked out the first playthrough where I got all of the secondary conditions met. This one doesn't really seem to have shifting secondary conditions like the first two did, and that's true for Raptor as well. They seem to have a fixed list of secondary conditions. The one variable that I have noticed with Killer Whale is that sometimes you will get a bot destroyer called Commander Jenkins, and I don't know what governs that. It doesn't seem to have any related secondary tasks that go with it, or if it does, I haven't noticed them. But I just noticed that in a couple of playthroughs that there was this Commander Jenkins that would be chatting away in the chat. And the first time I didn't actually peg it was a bot immediately. I did realise eventually, but yeah, it was a bit... I'm not quite sure what the purpose of Commander Jenkins is exactly. You don't have to save him, you don't have to save his captain. It might just be that if you are in a group that doesn't have a destroyer, maybe the game spawns one in, or maybe... I don't know. I don't know about Commander Jenkins. That was a little bit mysterious with Killer Whale, but anyway. So my preference always for doing this one was going through the centre entrance rather than the southern entrance, because if you come around the corner in the southern entrance, that destroyer that spawns down there could actually be surprisingly annoying to deal with. And if you've got the birthed Hosho coming for you as well, the bots the carrier bots especially are surprisingly effective at trying to vary the angle at which they drop their planes, and that will catch me out a little bit later in this one. I mean, the Molotov doesn't have the best AA, but I do have defensive at least. The main issue with the Molotov's AA, even with having defensive, in fact, is that it's comparatively short-ranged for a cruiser. And it's not hugely worth having AA buffing skills because the AA on the ship is just not very good at all. So, yeah, there are times when you're trying to dodge the G101's torps and then suddenly the carrier's coming for you as well, and it all goes very, very wrong, even though it's a low-tier carrier. So, I mean, as ever, having a Cleveland in the group is useful. Having an actual carrier in the group is even still more useful. Now, in this case, this was me just not noticing that those planes were coming for me until it was too late, and even with defensive and the split spread of planes, yeah, I still ate a torpedo, but I was saved from the second wave coming from a different direction by our own carrier, so that was quite good. However, what's bad is that I'm flooding now for at least another 10 seconds, so yeah. And this is one of the downsides of the Molotov in the PvE modes generally. All of them have had carriers to deal with. The AA is not great, but more importantly, the maneuverability isn't great. So while the firepower is really good, if the carriers start coming for you and making those cross drops, it's actually really hard to dodge. And it'll be the same in the Budioni, because they just don't maneuver well. They have those very wide turning circles, and it makes trying to dodge out of the way of those incoming torpedoes really quite difficult. So we've taken out the docked Kaiser. There is still the carrier though, and he still has planes, and some of them are coming for me because I'm the closest and I'm also quite low health. Now, I wasn't doing a widespread of torps here, that's just a little replay glitch. Yeah, this is one of the very few times in, I think, any of these operations where I got to use the torps on this thing, because the torps are not good. So he's dropping one lot there, and I'm turning in, and I'm going to miss those, but this turning in has slowed me right down, and now I've got the other lot coming from the other direction. And the question is, can I also manage to avoid those? And the answer is going to be no, because my turning circle is just too wide. It just cannot turn in fast enough because it's a Russian cruiser, and that's the flavour of Russian cruisers, is they manoeuvre horribly. However, the carrier is now dead, so we're not going to have to worry about that, but I'm critically low on health, and this isn't one where you can heal because you're the attacking force and you don't have any ships with you. So we're on to the second part. We've destroyed all the base facilities, that word, yeah, I don't know. And we've got to now make our getaway. Now, the spawns on this one are fixed. There seems to be a very low amount of randomization. In fact, the main thing that randomizes is that the spawn, or the exit area, can either be in the west on the one line, or it can be in the north at around, it's sort of A8, centered around there. So you can either have to go west or north, and I ended up having to go west a lot more than I went north, but I think that's just chance. Now, both of those areas are also where ships spawn, and that's the tricky part. And getting the secondary conditions, which involves taking out a pair of carriers who are in the northwest corner, and the first 4 defending waves of ships that come after you've triggered whatever conditions lead to them coming at you, because it doesn't always. That's one of the things I couldn't quite figure out is when these guys were triggering, because I initially thought it was when you killed all of the Liberty ships, but that doesn't seem to have been it. So we've got to take out 2 destroyers, the Kolberg and one of the Kaisers, and it's not actually this Kolberg, it's one of the Kolbergs that was to the north. And the Kaiser that you want to take out in particular is the one called Ulrich, because there's 2 Kaisers that spawn up there. So if you can get those 4 and you can get the carriers, that's all good. But you've also got this secondary condition of do not let the enemy reinforcements enter the haven. And it's not entirely clear what the boundaries are for that, because there's nothing marked on the map. It seems to be if they go beyond the southern and central entrances, that counts as them entering the haven, the inner port, and For the ships that can spawn in the north, if they manage to go below around the D and E line, I think, that also seems to then invalidate that secondary. So all three of these I've seen people struggling to get, and the carriers especially, this is where having your own carrier really helps out, because they can have their strike wing in position to take out the enemy carriers. So that's why, just in all of these modes, having a competent carrier player will be useful. In fact, in the next one you'll get to see me playing a carrier, but I'm not sure I would call myself competent exactly. So I've lived through that Kolberg, but I don't have a lot of health left. It doesn't, however, matter that much if I die, because it's half the remaining ships have to get to the exit. And the more people that die, that means the fewer ships need to get to the exit. So it can even be worth sacrificing your ship in certain circumstances. Let's say you're low health and on the other side of the map you've managed to get yourself completely out of position. It can be worth deliberately throwing your ship away so that people close to the exit can then trigger that final condition. In this case, I mean, I was playing with Redman36, who you will know from the Supporter Spotlight videos. He picked the New Mexico, and I think we both discovered together, because I hadn't played it myself on this particular mode, the New Mex isn't a great choice for this one just because it's fairly slow. We've also got a Koenig, and I think it was in this game, who isn't being particularly helpful or useful. Or maybe I'm thinking of a different game. I can't remember. You did see people that just seem to have very poor reading comprehension. Completing this one is not difficult. Completing it with all of the secondaries, that requires more teamwork, more cooperation, and it requires people to know what they're doing and to read and understand the secondary conditions. And I saw a fair few players that didn't seem to be interested in teamwork, didn't seem to know what they were doing, and didn't even seem to have glanced at the secondary conditions. So I'm critically low health, I'm going to die, doesn't really matter in this one. This is far less of a damage farm, this particular mode, than Aegis. Aegis, you had broadside cruisers for days, and there was actually some randomization with which ships were going to appear where, although some of the spawns were more or less fixed. In this, it's the spawn areas that are fixed, the ships are fixed, and the only real randomization, as I've said, is what the exit point is going to be. So we've got about 4 minutes left on the clock. I had a couple of these where we actually failed to complete the mission because we ran out of time. That's really been the only one of these operations so far where running out of time has actually been a factor. It's been a risk, and it's actually come quite close in a couple of games that I did where we had 3 or 4 of the secondaries done, but we just ran out of time. And it's sometimes chasing down those enemy ships from the first and second waves that you need to kill that were the problem, because people went chasing after them to try and kill them to get the secondary and then couldn't get to the exit point in time. So you really need some coordination. Anyway, that was a funny little moment. Our carrier got to the exit area waiting for other people to catch up, and that Gator spawned basically into our carrier and died and did no damage to our carrier. I'm not entirely sure what the mechanism there was, but that was just a free kill for the Ryujo. So we're into the last minute. This is getting awfully close to us running out of time, but Redman is getting close to the exit area. The Koenig, it was this one. The Koenig could have turned in at any time to the exit area, and that would have triggered it. We had all secondary conditions, and instead he chose a parallel course to the exit area, which was not helpful, which was really not helpful. So you might have noticed a little bit of panic in the chat there, because I was trying to get him to turn in. Fortunately, Redman got there in time, but unsurprisingly, that Koenig was dead last. That was one of those players that really did not seem to have a clue what was going on, even though it tells you right up in the top left-hand corner of the screen. So our Ryusho did well there. If you're a good carrier player, or even a decent carrier player, this is a good mode to practice your manual drops on, and to you know, contend with the AI carriers, which are actually not bad. You know, this is one of the things I have to say about the PVE in this game. The bot AI generally has been fairly decent, and I don't know if it's just the same AI like set of instructions that they use in ordinary co-op, or if it's a separate thing, or if it, maybe if it's based on that but it's tweaked and refined for each individual scenario. I don't know. So this is on to the current one, Raptor. As you can see, quite a familiar group of names, and myself and a carrier, and this one's actually fairly sped up just because carrier gameplay is not the most thrilling. And also there's also parts of this where if you're doing it right, nothing much happens. Now in some ways this is the trickiest one, because this is the one I think I've failed most, or I've been in with groups that have failed the most. And just ignore that drop. There will be many fail drops in this one, because it's easy in that it's the one with basically no randomization. Everything is fixed. The spawns are fixed. The spawn areas are fixed. The amount of ships, the types of ships, they're all completely fixed. You know what's going to spawn, you know when it's going to spawn, and you know where it's going to spawn. And so if you've got a coordinated group who knows where everything's happening and can put themselves in the appropriate places at the appropriate times, it's actually really quite easy to get done. And even then, there is still a bit of challenge, because you've got to escort this AI carrier to the exit point. But with a group of completely random players, it becomes very difficult, because you get, even when you're trying to communicate, on the EU server, there's always that thing of not everybody speaks the same language. So you're trying to get people, don't too many ships go this way, and there's going to be these ships spawning here and there. And you try telling people in the chat, and they're either not understanding you, or they're understanding you and just ignoring you. And then you end up with like all the ships chasing south, and then the carrier just ends up being alone and dying. The most frequently failed, even when we finished it, the most frequently failed secondary condition was to save the support Liberty ships, because you have to ensure that all of them survive till the end as well. Now, this was played on stream. I mean, Arun was here, Strangers, Rater. We had some other people from Arun's Discord as well. So this is all a fairly competent group of players. And me, that drop was terrible. That was terrible. Anyway, but everybody was a good player. Everybody knew what to do, and we all knew where stuff was coming from. So we've got a force in the south, because that's where the initial spawns are. Once you've taken care of that very first spawn, which is on the opposite side of the island from where you start, and we're going to have what's that? I think Yoko actually survives for a surprisingly long time, and Irun's going to die like a complete noob. But then we get the next group, which is the first of the carriers that we have to take out. But this is not all of our ships. We've also got Warspite and a Fuso, which I think one of them was Strangers, and I can't remember who was the other ship. But they're in position to take out enemies that are going to spawn more to the northwest once the next phase of the operation begins. Because at the moment we've escorted the Liberty ships to the carrier, and now the carrier is being repaired. Now this is one with a repair circle, so it's worth staying alive in this one, and trying to get your hit points back. But as with I want to say the first one, yeah, it is the first one, isn't it? As with the first one, it's a fixed 50 hit points per second. I really think it should be a percentage-based heal, because otherwise it can take absolutely forever to heal ships. The fact that it's just a fixed 50 hit points per second, and it means that comparatively speaking, a destroyer might heal back up relatively quickly, but then you get to cruisers and battleships, and you're just not going to get any appreciable amount of health back. So we've dealt with the stuff in the south. Everyone's now turned to deal with the next set of spawns, and I don't feel so bad about that drop. That Elba actually dodged quite well. The AI, as I've said, is actually quite decent. They will dodge things quite well. They will make decent drops with their planes. And if you're wondering about that drop, by the way, yeah, Strangers, sometimes when we division and he's in a carrier, he likes to do a thing. He'll come and drop some bombs next to my ship to splash a bit of salt water in my captain's martini. So that was me just returning the favour. But that's not even the silliest thing you're going to see, believe me. So I'm cycling my planes. You might have noticed, you know, strike independence. The only reason I'm playing the strike independence is because I don't have a Ryujo. Yeah, I don't know what happened to that word. Anyway, yeah, the Ryujo is just better because, generally speaking, Japanese carriers are just better because carriers in this game are still imbalanced and just, you know, the whole way that carriers are supposed to work just doesn't work. So yeah, if you're playing this and you've got a Ryujo, you take a Ryujo. But the strike independence is not terrible if you know there are going to be Clevelands. And in this one, of course, you've also got not only the Raptor itself, but there's an AI Bogue with you as well, and they've both got planes. So that's the second carrier spawned, which always spawns there near the exit. It's, you know, the sooner you can take that out, the better. It's good to knock it out of the air as soon as possible, or knock it out of the water as soon as possible. And in this case, because it spawns there, it quite frequently just runs into the border if you panic it like that. Now, I've lost a bunch of planes at this point, but this carrier's going down, and up north has spawned the final group, and that's it. There's no continual spawns as there is with Kill a Whale. Once you've killed everything, you've killed everything, which is going to happen in this one because we had a really coordinated group that was actually aware of what was going on. And you know, playing the first day when it came out, and when obviously people are learning what to do and where things spawn, I could accept seeing some very derpy things and people not knowing what to do. But as the days have gone on and you still see people doing really stupid things and just not having learned how the scenario works, just not having paid attention, there becomes less and less excuse, and you start to realise that some of these people are just bad players. And of course now ranked has started, and my patience is being tested by the less good players even more. So we're not doing too badly at all. I mean, we've lost one ship, which was Arun. I think this was the first time he'd done this, because we went through a couple of them because Arun hadn't done some of them, and I think Raptor hadn't either. And it's worth doing them. You know, I've said before, it's worth doing them because you get a 10-point captain, you can get a day of premium, and you can get various flags, and I think you get some camo as well. So absolutely it's worth doing them, even if you just do them to get the 5 stars to get all the possible rewards. You know, sure, why not? You know, and also doing it with the group is genuinely fun. And because we knew there's no more spawns at this point, we're just mucking around, and that was the worst drop. That was the worst drop. So as you may have figured out, you cannot team damage in this mode. So we were all just mucking around at this point completely, and why not? There's nothing left to do. We're literally just waiting for the Raptor to get to the exit. So in a way, this is both the hardest and the easiest of all the operations. It's the hardest with a group of randoms because getting everybody to be coordinated enough to be in the right places at the right times with a group of strangers that you cannot necessarily communicate with, you know, that's quite a tricky thing. But if you're doing it with a coordinated group, it suddenly becomes so much easier because there's no randomization, none at all. It's not even like the previous one where at least the exit point is randomized. In this, there's just nothing. Everything is completely fixed. So we're nearly at the end of this. The Raptor is getting ever closer to the exit circle, and at this point things got a bit lewd. I mean, absolutely. Strangers and Raptor decided to get a bit familiar, and I decided to break it up. And then instead of, you know, me breaking up the lewdness, instead I somehow made it even more lewd, because now I'm a carrier in a battleship sandwich, and that's just wrong. That's just wrong. I hope there are no children watching this right now, because I'm pretty sure YouTube would shut me down and you know, report me for mature content. That's just filthy. So there we go, one with 5 stars, and I'm curious to see what all of these will be like on the harder difficulty, because we don't know if there's going to be 4 new ones after this, or if we're going to get the same ones over again, but with the harder difficulty. And of course, with them having done these 4 different types of operation, all of which have had different things going on. You know, it's like they're trying out different things with each of these operations in terms of the amount of randomization, in terms of the numbers and the levels of ships and all that kind of thing. Well, it'll be interesting to see what changes they may make for them being a harder difficulty, because you can see in the client right now, you know, we've all been playing on the standard difficulty, but it also says there's going to be a harder difficulty, so maybe that's what's next. Who knows? But I, for one, have been actually really quite enjoying these, and you know, Aegis overall was definitely the most relaxing, the one where you could just go and farm some damage and actually get some pretty decent XP, and the rest of them have all been a little more challenging and required a little more coordination, but even just that ability to do what we did in that last one in Raptor, and just get together a group of friends and just all, you know, play through it, know what you're doing, coordinate, and then, you know, there's a bit of scope for mucking around at the end there as well. It's a nice, pleasant experience, because you can't get that many people together in warships otherwise. You can't all do the same thing. You can do countdowns with divisions to try and all get in the same game, but chances are, if you do manage it, you're going to end up on opposite sides of the team list. It's nice to be able to do things together with a group of friends, is what I'm saying. So anyway, Operations, I have enjoyed them, and I look forward to seeing what Wargaming does with future ones. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it and found it useful. If you have, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.